All right, let's dive into a country that just oozes passion and history and some pretty amazing landscapes. Today, we're going deep on Argentina.
It constantly defies expectations, you know?
Oh, yeah?
A land of contrasts, definitely. Soaring Andes Mountains on one side and vast pampas grasslands on the other.
It's true. Picturesque.
And the history, wow, it's a roller coaster, that's for sure. Triumphs, struggles, revolutions, reforms, all shaping the nation we see today.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is.
Okay, let's start with something simple, like the name itself, Argentina. I mean, it rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? But I'm guessing there's a story there.
Absolutely. It hints at riches. You see, it comes from the Italian word for silver, argento.
Ah, I see.
Early European explorers, they were captivated by these tales of silver mountains.
Silver mountains.
Yeah, and that fascination kind of shaped the country's identity, wouldn't you say?
For sure. I mean, that's pretty powerful.
It is. And get this, the first time Argentina pops up is in a poem from 1602, La Argentina.
Wow, a poem. That's a pretty cool origin story.
Right. A poem setting the stage for a whole country.
And I'm guessing the name evolved over time as the country itself went through changes.
You bet. First, under Spanish rule, it was the viceroyalty of the Rio de la Plata, reflecting the power dynamics.
Right, makes sense.
Then, boom, independence movements start popping up, and it shifts to the United Provinces of the Rio de la Plata.
Catchy.
And finally, after all the struggle, it emerges as the Argentine Republic.
The name we all know. Each change marking a turning point.
Yeah, absolutely.
But let's rewind even further back. Before the Spanish galleons showed up, what was the landscape like? Who were the original people there?
Imagine this land teeming with indigenous cultures, each one totally unique.
So it wasn't just one big group.
Nope, not at all. Down south, you had these nomadic hunter-gatherers, the Silknem. Tough folks braving those Patagonian winds.
Wow.
Further north, you'd find groups like the Tehuelche, advanced hunter-gatherers, later influenced by the Mapuche people.
So a mix of different groups, all adapting to their environments.
Exactly. And we can't forget the agricultural societies further north, the Diaguita and the Guarani. They were masters of cultivating crops in their regions.
It's like a tapestry then. All these different cultures woven together.
That's a great way to put it, a complex tapestry.
But then come the Europeans, the Spanish conquistadors, in the 16th century. And that's a whole new chapter, right?
A chapter full of, both progress and tragedy, to be honest.
I can imagine.
Think about Buenos Aires, the bustling city we see today. Its early years, man, they were rough.
Really?
Founded in 1536, abandoned, reestablished in 1580.
They abandoned it.
They did. It's almost symbolic, isn't it?
Oh.
That rising from the ashes, it reflects the resilience that becomes a hallmark of Argentina's story, I think.
So even Buenos Aires had a tough start, even though it ended up as the heart of the viceroyalty.
Exactly.
And that struggle, that fight for survival, it seems to echo throughout Argentina's history, especially as we get into the early 1800s, right? The time of revolution.
Oh, for sure.
Argentina's fight for independence kicks off with the May Revolution of 1810. Pretty bold move, replacing a Spanish viceroy with her own local government.
It was a huge statement declaring, hey, we're in charge now. And of course, that kicked off a war. A long, long fight for freedom.
That's where figures like Jose de San Martin come in.
Exactly. A key player, not just in Argentina, but in Chile and Peru's liberation, too.
A true continental hero.
True was.
But here's something I bet most people don't know. There was actually a proposal to make Argentina a monarchy, led by an Inca descendant. Can you believe that?
It's wild, right?
It's crazy.
The Inca plan of 1816, that's what they called it, makes you wonder, what if?
Right. What if they had gone down that path instead of the republic they chose in 1816?
Fascinating to think about.
A monarchy in Argentina.
Wow.
But even with independence declared, things weren't settled right. The next challenge was actually, building a nation.
And that was anything but straightforward. This is where those clashes between the centralists and federalists come in.
Ah, the classic power struggle.
You've got it. We see figures like Juan Manuel de Rosas, strong federalist leader, clashing with those who wanted a more centralized government. Intense debates, conflicts. It really shaped the very fabric of the nation.
So a nation forged through fire, you could say.
You could definitely say that.
And then comes the rise of the Generation of 80. This group of leaders with a new vision for Argentina, they focused on liberal economic policies and encouraged tons of European immigration.
And that wave of immigration, it transformed the country. By 1908, they were the 7th wealthiest nation in the world.
Wow, 7th. That's impressive.
It was a huge boom. New ideas, skills, cultures, it reshaped everything. But it's important to acknowledge the downsides, too.
You're talking about the conquest of the desert.
Yes. That brutal campaign against indigenous populations during this time.
A dark side to the progress.
Exactly. It's a reminder that national narratives are complicated, full of both triumphs and tragedies.
They are. And as we move into the 20th century, things get even more intense.
Oh, yeah. Hold on tight.
Political upheavals, economic swings, and a nation trying to figure out its place on the world stage. All this and more awaits us in part 2 of our deep dive into Argentina. We've touched on the history.
Yeah.
But what about the actual land? Argentina's huge, right?
It is.
I'm guessing it's not just endless plains, though.
Oh, no, not even close. Argentina's geography, well, it's as diverse as the history, really. Dramatic, too. You've got those Andes Mountains in the west.
Oh, yeah, those peaks are incredible.
Snow-capped, reaching for the sky. And then, of course, you have the pampas grasslands. That's the agricultural heartland, stretching forever.
And Patagonia, we can't forget that. I mean, have you seen pictures?
It's breathtaking, isn't it?
Glaciers, mountains, that rugged coastline, it's almost surreal.
It is. And those are just the famous spots. Imagine standing in front of Iguazu Falls.
Oh, wow.
It's this cascade of water, so powerful, so immense, it leaves you speechless, honestly.
I can only imagine.
Or picture yourself climbing Aconcagua, the highest peak in the Americas.
Isn't that the tallest mountain outside of Asia, too?
It is. Quite a challenge, even for experienced climbers.
Aconcagua, definitely adding that to my bucket list. But with all this natural beauty, there must be challenges too, right? Climate change is affecting everywhere, and I doubt Argentina's escaped that.
You're right, it's facing some serious environmental issues. The climate change is messing with rainfall patterns.
How so?
Some areas are getting hit with worse droughts, others with more flooding. It's complicated, and it impacts everything. Agriculture, water resources, even the ecosystems.
It's a good reminder that even beautiful places have problems we need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
But let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about the people. Argentina is often called a crisol de razas, a melting pot.
It is.
What makes its demographics so unique?
It's a nation of immigrants, through and through. That's in its DNA. You see, the main ancestry is European, especially Italian and Spanish.
A legacy of that huge immigration wave back in the day.
Exactly. And that influence, well, it's everywhere. Architecture, food, even the pace of life in the cities.
It's fascinating how those historical events still have an impact today.
But we can't forget the people who were there before the Europeans, right?
Of course not. While the European influence is huge, it's important to remember the indigenous and African populations too. They've contributed so much to the culture.
It's like layers upon layers of history adding to the story.
It is.
And all this must be reflected in the country's culture, right? It must be vibrant.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
When people think Argentina, they think tango.
Makes sense?
It's a dance that's just so sensual, so passionate. It's become a symbol of Argentina's soul, I'd say.
For sure. But it's not just tango, is it? I mean, Argentina has some amazing writers, filmmakers, artists.
So true. Think about their literature. They've given the world giants like Jorge Luis Borges.
Oh, I've heard of him.
His work is complex, philosophical, it's captivated readers for generations. And then there's the film industry.
They've won Oscars, haven't they?
They have. The Official Story, The Secret in Their Eyes. These films explore really tough topics, like social justice, memory, the impact of the past. Powerful stuff.
It is.
It's amazing how art can give us a glimpse into a nation's soul. And speaking of things that get to the soul, the food. Asado, that's practically a national religion, isn't it?
Pretty much. Argentine barbecue is more than just food. It's a social event, a ritual, a celebration. It's about coming together with friends and family, sharing stories and laughter, and of course, amazing grilled meats.
That sounds fantastic. And those empanadas?
Delicious.
Little pockets of flavor.
And no talk about Argentina is complete without their wine. From bold Malbecs to the refreshing Torrontes, their wines are world class.
It sounds like Argentina really does offer something for everyone. But like any country with such a rich and complex history, there have been dark times too. Argentina's had quite the journey. From colonial times to economic ups and downs, it's faced its share of difficulties. When you think of the 20th century, what really stands out?
It was a tough time, that's for sure. The 20th century, I mean.
Yeah.
Or repeating pattern almost. Democratic governments overthrown by military coups.
Over and over.
Yeah. And all that instability, well, it created a lot of uncertainty. And sometimes it led to some really dark periods, like the Dirty War in the 70s and 80s.
We hear that term a lot, dirty war. But for those who might not know, what exactly happened?
It's a terrible chapter, honestly. The military junta, they went after anyone they saw as opposition.
Targeted them.
Yeah, thousands of people just disappeared, taken by the state. No one knew what happened to them for years.
That's horrifying.
It was. And the effects of that period, they're still felt today throughout Argentina.
It's a stark reminder of how fragile democracy can be and the human cost of political violence. But on top of all that, Argentina had to deal with economic crises too, right? Throughout the 20th century, I mean.
Oh yeah, the economy's been a double-edged sword for them.
How so?
Well, they had times of incredible prosperity fueled by agriculture and industry, but then, bam, huge financial crises. The worst one recently was that collapse in 2001, 2002.
I remember hearing about that. It hit them hard, didn't it?
It did. Social unrest, disillusionment. It was tough.
How did they ever recover from that?
You know, it's the Argentine people. They're resilient. They adapt. They find ways to move forward. And while the stars are there, there's this spirit, this hope that things can get better.
So, where does Argentina stand today, looking ahead? What are the big challenges, big opportunities in the 21st century?
Well, they started the century with a lot on their plate. Rebuilding the economy, healing from the past. It's a nation that's constantly changing, trying to find its place in the world, you know.
It does seem like it's at a turning point.
It does. But even with all that, there's a sense of possibility. They have the potential to be a real leader in Latin America, even on the world stage.
We've seen some big political shifts lately, too. Most notably, Javier Milei.
Yeah, the first libertarian president.
It's a big change. What does that signal, do you think, about where they're headed?
I think it shows that people are ready for something different. Milei, he's an outsider. He's got these unconventional ideas.
And that appeals to some people.
It does. Those who are tired of the same old politics, it's too early to say what'll happen long term, but it definitely means Argentina's at a crossroads.
It feels like we've only just scratched the surface here. There's so much more to this country. If you had to pick one thing for our listeners to take away from this deep dive, what would it be?
Argentina is complex. You can't put it in a box. Beauty, struggle, passion, resilience. It's all there. It's a nation shaped by its past, its people, its land, and most importantly, it's still evolving, still surprising us. It's a captivating place if you take the time to really look.
Well said. It's a country that gets under your skin, stays with you, and this deep dive, it's just a taste of what Argentina has to offer. To our listener, if you're ever feeling adventurous, if you want a place that'll challenge you, excite you, go to Argentina. You won't be disappointed.
You might even find yourself lost in the tango or enjoying an amazing asado with new friends. It's a land waiting to be discovered, and its story is far from over.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into Argentina. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never lose that curiosity.